Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Adaptive Zone podcast. My name is Matthew Boyd. I'm a physiotherapist and running coach. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you're so inclined, share it with a friend. Today, we're joined by one of our clients, my personal favorite, Bridget. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. So just to start off with, we're going to talk about the troubles you've had with your running over the last year or so and how you're doing now. Could you tell us, just before we get into that, a little bit about your background as a runner?
Yep, absolutely. So I started running track when I was 8. I loved it. It was, something that I took with me throughout school, and really found that running was um, something I enjoyed, both for the physical exertion and the competition, but also it did wonders for me mentally in managing my
Hmm.
anxiety and giving me time to get out of my head and out of my way a little bit. And so I continued to run pretty regularly, less competitively, would do races here and there. Took some time off when life got in the way, but always found myself coming back to running and having that be sort of a foundational part of my life.
Yeah, cool. So it was sort of not just a way to stay healthy, but also like mentally you found it beneficial to be running regularly. I know for me that's a big one too. I probably appreciate that more now that I'm older than I did when I was younger, just how
Hmm.
important it is from that side of things. And then so that was sort of your background, and then you started to have some troubles. Which could you bring the listener up to speed on what was happening?
Yeah, absolutely. So this most recent troubles, as you put it, was I was really having discomfort in my knees, and thought like, oh, it's just overuse, and if I take some time off, it'll fix itself. Um, and so, yeah, stopped running completely. Um, Rested for a couple of weeks. It wasn't getting better. Um, and so I started doing physical therapy. It was in February of this year. And in that program that I was doing, I was still not running. And the direction that that provider took was, we're not going to run until you feel good. And I kept feeling bad. And so, didn't feel that I was making any sort of progress. And in fact, felt that it was getting worse and worse. And um, now I'm not running to manage my anxiety, and now I'm having, sort of chronic discomfort that was starting to get in the way of my everyday activities. And so I was really at a point where I was like, I need to do something about this, or else this is going. I think when I first came to you, I was like, I'm worried this will be the rest of my life.
Hmm.
And so was actively looking for different solutions that would help me not only get back to a place of running, but get to a point where um, I could live my life as I wanted to live it.
What was your understanding of what the problem was? Were you given any kind of like diagnosis or impression, or did you get a sense of what the issue was that was yeah.
Yeah, so there was a couple of things going on there. I was told I had, the ubiquitous runner's knee in both knees, and then the IT band syndrome. And all of this apparently was stemming from a weakness in my hips and glutes. And so, um, my knees were turning inwards more when I was landing. And so I was putting more pressure on certain areas than I should, um, or than I was being able to sustain at that point comfortably. And so it was all sort of like, the general diagnoses that people that run too much get when their knees hurt.
Right.
And so, so I think that was the approach that we had initially taken in trying to just build some strength in the glutes, but again, not doing any sort of running.
Okay. So you were given some exercises to strengthen your glutes,
Hmm.
and you're doing that for a while. And what did that look like? What did it consist of? Like how often, what exercises were you doing, and how long were you doing them for, and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I was going to a provider from like February through April twice a week, and then down to once a week, but and I would do things on my own, and it was um, you know, assisted squats or like step downs, uh, like having weights on my ankles and doing leg lifts, some some things along those lines, um, some like breaking up of fascia is that with the scraping tool,
Hmm.
but it was all pretty contained to doing some leg strengthening work. I was able to do it at home if I needed to do it at home. So I would say 3 to 4 days a week. Some of the stuff I would do every day, some um, like balancing exercises, things like that. But yeah, it was a lot of, I would spend an hour at the provider's office doing
Hmm.
workouts once or twice a week for months
Hmm.
and months and months. So it was a lot of
Okay.
time.
Okay. So so you say months and months of this kind of February through April, that's when you were attending the clinic, and you were going
But
maybe a
that
couple of
was
times a
when I
week,
was,
and you had homework.
sorry to interrupt. That was when I was attending twice a month. And then I continued through like June doing
Okay.
once a month. So, or
Okay.
once a week, twice a week and once a week. Hmm.
Yeah. And then you had homework as well. And
Hmm.
how did you feel all that was going? Did you feel like you made progress through that time?
It didn't. And it was frustrating. Some things I should say, some things I did make progress in that, like, um, I I think that my glutes did get a little bit stronger through this,
Yeah.
but it was getting to a point where, and this is when I reached out to you, where I lived on the second floor of an apartment building and didn't want to walk down the stairs to take my
Hmm.
trash out because it was just really uncomfortable, bordering on painful. And so I felt like, oh, I'm investing this time and money, and um I'm get it I'm in a worse place than I was in
Okay.
February when I first started. It's affecting my life more dramatically in that it's not just now I can't go for a run, but I'm changing the way that I live my life because
Yeah.
of the discomfort. Hmm.
So went from a place of I can't run because of the knee pain to I'm doing my rehab, and my glutes are getting stronger, but symptoms wise, it actually seems to be a bit worse than it was. Like not a ton worse, but you're noticing it's not just that you can't run now, but also you kind of have a bit of discomfort going downstairs, and it sounds like a lot of apprehension about
Hmm.
making it worse by doing things like
Yeah.
that.
Yes, that's
Okay.
exactly it.
And how are you feeling about your prospects going forward? So, like at that time, were you like, it'll get there. I'll get back to running and I'll get over it. Or were you feeling more pessimistic than that?
I was feeling much more pessimistic than that, and um, really was unsure if I would ever run again. I was like, you hear people say like, "Oh, I used to run, but I can't because of my knees," and I was like, "Oh, that's gonna be me." Like, and then where I was really starting to get concerned was that it would became bigger than running, right? It was,
Hmm.
and so it was like, I guess this is. I was concerned that I was just always going to be uncomfortable and like thinking about doing things I used to not have to think about doing, like
Hmm.
walking down a flight of stairs or, you know, finding a parking space that's too far from my apartment, and like how am I gonna get back and
Oh
feel
man,
okay
yeah.
about it.
That's you don't want to be thinking about that for at
Yeah.
least another 50 years or
Yeah,
so.
exactly.
So about the, in terms of your fitness, like your general fitness and health, were you able to do other things to kind of substitute for the running to kind of stay healthy or?
Yeah, so I was swimming some,
Mm.
and that was good. Although my own biases here, I loved running. I find swimming very boring, so it
Oh,
wasn't.
don't get me. Don't worry, we don't have any swimmers listening to this show.
So that was checking a like a cardio box, or but not necessarily doing what it wasn't a replacement for running for me. I had started doing some uh, biking, stationary biking, but it was also experiencing discomfort with
Ah,
that,
okay.
and so was told to stop doing that by the physio provider I was using.
In case you were making it worse, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. And then, okay, so that brings us to like kind of the summer of
Mm-hmm.
this year. We're recording this in November 2023. And you've sort of brought us up to the summer. Things aren't going super well by the sounds of it. The
Yeah.
symptoms aren't really any better, if anything, a little bit worse. Noticing it walking downstairs and such, whereas before it was just with running. You haven't ran in 6 months?
It would have been November of last year, because I had was like, oh,
So
I'll take
about
time
8.
off,
Yeah, about
and then when that
8 months
didn't
or so.
work.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so then what happened? Because at some point along that time, I can't remember when we first connected. Yeah. So
So I think it
talk me
was in
through like what
June.
happened next
Yeah, so
around
I
June.
had
Okay.
actually um, started following you because of the videos around gait, because
Mm-hmm.
I was convinced that my gait was causing all of my problems. And so this was prior to um, injuries. Like I have a funky gait, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
so I was aware of your services, and then had signed up for the emails about common running injuries, and which I still get and enjoy. Um, and then so then I was really at a point of like desperation, where it was like, well, I just try something different and see if there's an improvement, and then we can take it from there. I didn't want to go to a surgeon, like this is where my mind was then. And so had, because I was already familiar with you through social media, I was looking at the programs that you were offering, and I saw that you had a specific runners rehab program, and uh was like, yeah, like give it a try, and comfortable with it not being in person. I know myself well enough to know that I wanted to improve, and so if there was work to be done and you gave me work to
Mm.
do, that I would do it. And so I knew that that wouldn't be a barrier for me. And so I reached out, and we had an initial call, and I felt like, so I don't think I realize, like, oh yeah, you're going to be running again, and like fairly soon. Right? So like that felt so hopeful, to
Okay.
hear from you that like you thought that was um not only possible but probable, and
Hmm.
so signed up to work with you, and it was the first day that you had me running, and
Yeah.
which
Let's see
was,
what it's like.
yeah, which was great. And it's so interesting, just again, sort of how my mind works, and how I relate to like coaches and your expertise. Is like, I would have never run 6 minutes on my own, and then but for you to say, why don't you just try it, I'm like, all right, like I was like, oh, this is going to be bad, but I'm going to do it, right? And so, and it wasn't as bad as I had anticipated, and so it was really an excellent um, process to like have a roadmap of what recovery will look like, and understanding that there are, some turns as things progress differently. But I just remember feeling like incredibly relieved when we started working together, that there was answers out there, and that there was a process for getting me back to where I wanted to be.
Yeah, I think the sort of vibe I'm getting is that it gave you some hope that, it
Mhm.
seems like you'd kind of lost hope that you would get back to running because you weren't running, you weren't allowed to run until like you reached a certain threshold that you weren't getting any closer
Mhm.
to. And when we said, okay, let's just try it, even if it's just a few minutes, and start there, and then we'll take it from there, you were like, okay, right, this is what I want to do. I want to run. So that gives you a
Yeah.
little hope that perhaps this can get better. And I think we often underestimate how much influence that kind of those mental side of things, the psychology, the emotions associated with the injury, how much they actually upregulate or downregulate pain. So
Yes.
if you have pain in an area for a long time and it's disrupted your life in such a major way as yours has, what'll happen is your nervous system will perceive a lot of threat from that pain.
Hmm.
And then whenever you feel it, it'll bump it up a bit more. It'll make you feel it a bit worse. Upregulating is a term they use. And when we give someone a bit of hope that, like, this is okay, we can try it. And if it doesn't go so well, we'll change, we'll adjust. What that does is it down regulates, because now it's not like if I get pain, I'm never going to be able to run again. I'm going to
Right.
be, one of those people who said I used to run, but now my knees hurt. It is, if this doesn't work so well, we're going to try something else. And
Hmm.
that gives you a slightly more positive spin on it, which down regulates the painful experience. And what I found with you that was probably a nice surprise, because it doesn't always go this way, is that we were actually able to progress quite quickly. In the first
Hmm.
4 weeks, from just trying a bit of running, we were able to get you running quite a bit. I don't remember exactly how we did that. I should have looked before we came on, but I just remember feeling like this is going quicker than I expected. I don't know how you experienced those first 4 weeks, because that's always a tricky period.
Yeah, I also thought we progressed faster than I had anticipated, and I would think what you just said about sort of that mental connection. Um, you you introduced me to the red, orange, green
Hmm.
stoplights, and so it became my relationship to the pain that I was experiencing also became different. And so then I felt more comfortable in being able to push myself a little bit more, because it was like, okay, this is an orange, and that means something, but that doesn't mean stop, right? And so it gave me, I think, of a tools to use in sort of managing that mental side of it. But yeah, I think that first week again, I also could have looked, but I think I ran 3 days, and for short bits, but and I do remember that every run in that first period, I felt less pain and less discomfort at the end than I did in the beginning. And so that also allowed me to invest more into it, because I knew like this is going to not be great for the first couple of minutes, but by the time you're at minute 10, you're going to you're going to feel an improvement. And
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, and then I got to be outside and do something I love doing. And so we did make progress very quickly on that. And then also at the same time, you had me working on some drills to improve that gait issue, which was not the cause of lots of things, but also, and so I could see improvement in that as well. And so that was motivating to keep pushing forward.
Yeah, and we haven't mentioned the strength as well. We had you doing that, so it's not any one thing that we don't
Mm-hmm.
pin all the blame on one thing. It's like we'll optimize all of the things, and probably there's contribution from different parts. There's probably in some cases a bit more contribution from the gait than from the running technique or
Mm-hmm.
from the running training or from the strength. But as long as we hit them all, then we
Right.
cover our bases essentially. And I wanted to come back to and touch on the traffic lights because I think what you said there was really interesting about, you would get some pain when you were doing these runs in the first month, and you knew that if you continued because you'd had this experience, that it typically felt a bit better by the end of the run than the start. And for me, I think, and for you too, you would call that green light pain, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So now you're like, oh, that's a green light. It means keep going. Whereas before, all pain had been red light. Red light means
Right.
stop. If you have any pain, you must stop. And that doesn't give you any nuance, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
either you are completely pain free or you don't run at all. And that is the problem, that you can't use running as the rehab if you have such a strict rule, and the pain traffic lights give you a little bit of nuance to the
Right.
equation of what should I do about this pain.
Right. And nuance absolutely in my understanding and my approach, and then also just more data, right? And so being able to share that with you and Heidi and say like, this was really an orange light day, but like I ran in the morning and last night I ran at night, so it could, like it just made it
Mm,
more data rich, and therefore could work out a little bit more about like what actually is happening rather than it just being black or white, like this is pain,
yep.
this is no pain. And figuring out how to I think at one point we did like adjust down for
Mm-hmm.
a little bit, um, which was great because previously it would have stopped, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, just having that feedback loop and being able to pick up data from actually running was really helpful to me in understanding the conditions.
Yeah, and that's a nice point too about the data richness of when you have more information and you're not looking at it in this black and white way, then you can tease things out sometimes like, oh, well, look, we did this last week and that went fine. But then this week we tried to add a little bit to your long run and then you had a
Mm-hmm.
recovery run the next morning. And it was after that recovery run that you had more orange moving into red pain.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do is we adjust that. We don't stop running for a week. We don't rest for a week. We don't sort of completely sort of hands off and give up. It's like, okay, well, it's that thing that we tried, that progression. Let's pull that back a little bit and let's just keep it the same for a couple of weeks. Let your
Mm-hmm.
knees get used to this level, then we'll try again. And maybe we'll try something different. Maybe we'll add 15 minutes to every run in the week. Or, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
there's
Right.
different ways we can approach it. If we see a pattern of a specific thing that the knees don't seem to like, we can back off that a little bit and then come back and push on that particular aspect later when you're
Mm-hmm.
more resilient, when you're more robust, when the area is less sensitive. So
Right.
so that sort of brings us through the first month of working with us. And then tell us about the sort of second, third, and then onwards after that. How did all that go?
Yeah, so it's been great. I finished the rehab portion. I will say, like, when I was going in person and doing strength work and all of all of that wasn't working for me. I was doing a lot of like leg exercises, and then when I started with you and started running, doing the strength work, working on my gait, like I noticed how quickly I built strength because of sort of the combination of all of it. And so even doing the strength work in and of itself has been helpful, um, especially compared to what I had previously been doing, which I would have described as strength work, but it sort of, as you said, all of the pieces working together. And so that's been something I've been very excited to continue
Mm.
doing over the next section of the rehab, and then working with you afterwards. But not only seeing like the amount of weight that I'm able to work with move up, but seeing like physically the difference, feeling physically the difference. And that certainly is helping to improve my running. Um, I, that first 4 weeks was going back to the traffic lights. There was some orange days, there were some red days. I think like moving into that second 4 weeks, like very few orange days. It was all really about building up my ability to run longer or quicker, or building that strength. And so it really felt protective of, like, we've worked on addressing a active injury problem area, and now moving on to like protecting myself moving forward from having these issues again. And so it's been really fun to play around with that. And um, yeah, it's sort of incredible to me how quickly we were able to build up um, distances and times, and all of it in that end section of the rehab. And now working with you for coaching. I saw today I have a fartlek. I'm very excited for that. But it's just been really great to have guidance and sort of partnership in figuring how to get back to something that I really valued in having in my life. And so yeah, it's been awesome. And I have like seen the results, and I feel the results every day. And so I'm just psyched to continue.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I mean it's been an absolute pleasure, and like I always the way I look at it is like we have a project and we're working on it together. Like me, you, and Hardy. Like
Mm-hmm.
we look at, okay, I want to be able to run, I want to do half marathons again, but I can't because of my knee pain. That's the problem. That's the project. How do we fix it? Rather than a kind of prescriptive approach.
Mm-hmm.
I don't pretend that me and Heidi have all the answers. It is what happened. What should we do about it? How did that go? Try again. That kind of iterative approach I
Right.
prefer. In terms of like where you're at now, so we've been about 5 months now. I think we've been working together. And like you said, the
Mm-hmm.
first month or two, we were really held back by the knee pain. We had to take a couple of like plateau or slight regressions, but otherwise smoother than I expected, right? In terms of getting you back to training. Just for the listeners, like where you at now with your running? How much running can you do? What's the longest you've run and
Yeah,
that kind of
I
stuff?
think the longest run that I've done is an hour and 45 minutes, which is like truly wild. I think the first run you had me do was 6 minutes long. So to
Yep, so
go
that's a
from,
bit longer.
yeah, and I'm running 4 days a week. I'm doing, um, a long run, sprints, all of it, and I'm doing 2 days of strength right now. I had been doing 3 and then needed to back off just while I sort out non-running schedule issues. But it's what I think has been the most special, or something that I'm like trying to hold on to, is that I don't think about it, right? It's like I put my shoes on, I like, if it's a long run, do I have water, do I have a snack, but then it's like then I can just go. Whereas again, 5 months ago, the idea of running 6 minutes took so much like mental preparation, and like I had a plan, and so really not trying to not take for granted that I am where I want to be in terms of like endurance, and obviously there's improvement, but I'm back to where I was last year, and that it's something that I can enjoy and not have to agonize over or be anxious about it. And like I said, running for me is so mental that having that release, and having running not be a source of anxiety is something that I'm really celebrating.
Yeah, it's like if running is supposed to be a tool to help us, for a lot of people, for me included, manage our stress and just kind of a mental health boost in a way, then if you're constantly worried while you're doing it about the running, about the pain, it it's not going to achieve that, right? So you try to find that elsewhere with swimming and such, but it can be difficult, right? Because we are runners because we like running, right? So for whatever reason. Now, in terms of yeah, I wanted to say as well the thing you mentioned just now where you said I don't have to think about it anymore. I think at some point you said my like favorite phrase, which whenever I hear it from a runner, it just makes my day. It's like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot about that. You know, when I asked like, how's the knee? How is the knee on this road? It's like, oh yeah, I forgot. No, it's fine. And
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I just love that
exactly.
because it's that when you first start, it's so ubiquitous. It takes up all your thoughts about running and even into other parts of your life that to not think about it at all. I love that because I've experienced that myself, and it's very rewarding for me to hear that. In terms of like where you're going now, so now I'd say you're back to like full training, like where you wanted to
Mhm.
be. Like when we started, it was like I want to just be able to run and do my thing again. Where do you want to go from here? Like now that you're not so worried about the knees, what do you have planned for the future with your running?
So I would like to get back to doing some half marathons. And now I'm just looking for races to run when the weather is nice. More than any physical restraints, just timing and location and temperature. Um, but I am, I feel capable of doing that. And so now I'm looking at like making like I'd like to make some improvements to speed. I'd like to make. I still have work to do in mileage and making that comfortable. And so it's really just building now, and that's a great place to be.
Awesome. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think I can confidently say that 2024 is going to be a lot more fun running wise than 2023.
Yeah. Yes,
So that's
absolutely.
yeah, that's exciting to just focus on half marathons and get one of them booked in probably for like springtime or something like that and then see where we
Mm-hmm.
go from there.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the show and sharing your story with us. It's very helpful for the listeners to hear that, when I can't run 6 minutes and I'm scared to and I can't walk downstairs to, oh yeah, I ran an hour and 45 and I forgot about my knees. Like this is very hopeful message. And as we talked about, a lack of hope when you're injured can be
Mm-hmm.
make a bad problem worse. So I think you have hopefully done some of that for someone who's listening to this.
Good. I hope so. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording there.
All right.